Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our third workshop on AI. We're very pleased and delighted to have you back, Johan. Johan Steyn will be presenting for us today on AI and the job market. And we do hope this is going to be an interactive discussion. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put your hand up, use the chat, share your thoughts, and we can have a robust discussion on this. We have found that this AI topic is moving so quickly that you might well have found things that we don't know about and Johan doesn't know about. So we are looking forward to having all your thoughts as well. So without further ado, Johan, enjoy the session. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, and to SABSA for the opportunity once again. Thank you for everyone who's taking time out of their schedules to join. You know, I often joke, but it's not really a joke when I say that if people know what I really know, I don't know if anyone will invite me to speak on this topic, because I'm so daunted with how quickly it's changing, how much I don't know, even though I'm reading as much as I can, speaking to people, obviously implementing this technology. But I want to just set the scene at the outset that we need each other to learn about this topic. We need different lenses, different opinions. I only know that much, and it's a very small little bit given this big topic of digitization and smart technology. In fact, these days I prefer to speak about non-human intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, because that name doesn't make any sense. So what I would like to do today is maybe just trigger your thinking, because I think anyone who speaks on this topic, as it relates to many other topics as well, who think they have the answer, they're the go-to person, the expert, they are fooling themselves and they're fooling us. I want to tell you a few stories from my experience, but like Anne said, let's make it interactive. Let's learn from each other. There are so many angles and points that definitely I will never be thinking about unless I learn from you. So please pose your questions and comments in the chat. I'm going to aim to go no longer than, say, 35 or 40 minutes. And then would love to learn from you, hear your questions. I'm going to try and answer some of them, but hopefully there are many of us on the webinar today who can also answer those questions. So I'm going to fire off my slides, and then we'll get going. And then again, Anne, I just want to make it full screen, and just if you can confirm that it is, in fact, full screen, and then I'll get going. Yeah, so Anne, can you see the full screen?
Yes, it's working perfectly. Okay. Thanks, Johan.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. All right, so the job market, the future of work. I'm sure many of you have been reading on this, have been following the news media, the trends. Some of you are most likely pursuing this topic from an academic, from a research point of view. I often joke, and I think I said this the last time we were together, when I talk about futurists, I don't think I'm a futurist, but a futurist is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that's not there. Because, you know, the world is changing so quickly. It's been changing quickly for a long, long time. Yeah, but it feels like it's exponentially changing faster and faster with the advance of smart technologies. And if any of us can predict where will we be in 5 years from now, what kind of jobs will exist, what do we need to train and teach people on, I don't know if anyone can do that. I think we can look at trends, we can look at the past and some past trends, and I'm going to touch on some of that today. We need to think about, you know, will AI kind of technology replace everything? No way. It won't replace my doctor. It'll hopefully help my doctor to better treat me and my children and diagnose illnesses. Will AI replace experience? Absolutely not. Will it help us with the heavy lifting, the automation of mundane and repetitive tasks? It's already doing that, and hopefully we are all either utilizing that or looking at utilizing it. But there's so much about what it means to be human, what it means to have experience, what it means to have empathy, that you cannot AI, that you cannot automate. And I don't think it will be possible for the foreseeable future, if ever, really. So I think what we are often grappling with these days is what is that balance between what only humans can do and what technology should be able to do to help us. And then that then leads us to the question of what will the job market of the future look like, and therefore, how do we most effectively train and teach people for the future? I think that what we are teaching in business schools will largely stay relevant. The fundamentals of financial management, of leadership, of dealing with people, and many other topics. You can't AI those things. So I'm not saying that we should totally overhaul how we're doing this, how we're teaching. But what are those future skills that we should bring into our curricula that would make this basis that will always stay the same, I think, the basic principles of management, of finance, of business. How do we take those very fundamentals into a future that is largely unknown? So I'm going to give you some of my, let's call it 2 cents worth. Hopefully it will trigger some thinking, but I'm very keen to see the comments and questions and also to learn from you toward the end of our time together today. Now, what you're seeing on the screen now, the AI conundrum, catastrophe or K9 level intelligence, is actually an article of mine that will be in Business Day tomorrow. I've mentioned this before. I've been writing for Business Day newspaper for 2 years, and I've really been triggered by this topic. Now, the editors might change it because tonight at 11, they start printing the 70,000 newspapers, very exciting. You know, but since ChatGPT became a thing in November of last year, so much has happened. On the one hand, from a positive point of view, many people who have never really known much about AI, paid attention, are now paying attention. So that's a good thing. I think this kind of technology has been largely reserved, in my view, to technologists and to in academia. But now a lot of people are talking about it. The problem with that is also that now a lot of people are suddenly experts in AI, posting things on online webinars, podcasts and the like. And I sometimes read or view it, and I think, and again, everyone's view is important. We need it. But people are really jumping on the bandwagon. And the result that I'm seeing is 2 extremes. On the one hand is total fear of this technology, even more than before. Real worry about job losses, which is a very relevant topic because we are out automating a lot of jobs, and we will most likely out automate almost all jobs in the next 20 to 30 years, I think. So there is this concern. We see that the European Union is doing a lot to regulate this technology. We see that the White House is doing a lot. A lot of countries are suddenly waking up. Sadly, as far as I know, and I might be wrong, but I think I'm not, is that our country is doing nothing. You see a bit of a news release here and there about the 4IR and what certain universities and government are doing. My fear is that we are already too late. We're struggling to keep the lights on. How can we worry about the 4th industrial revolution? We are losing whatever competitive edge we might have had in the global market very quickly. So the one extreme that I see in the people I chat with, call it in a post-chat GPT world, is this wake-up call and a real worry and real pessimism. It's also influenced by the media and by Hollywood, killer robots walking down the streets, coming down the aisles, sitting at our desks, taking over. This total dystopian view that we are already doomed. Aspects of that is relevant, but it's not completely irrelevant. But on the other side of the spectrum, what I'm seeing these days is a totally unrealistic and unbalanced view about what AI is and what it can do. A real silver bullet to fix fundamental business problems, process problems, leadership problems. The robots that can look after us in our homes, that can take care of us. Theoretically, that technology exists, but it will cost you hundreds and thousands of dollars to get a robot that can clean your house, look after the elderly, go out to Woolies and buy your food for this evening. Is that possible? I think to some extent it is. Is it applicable to most of us? It's absolutely not. So the other side is this totally unbalanced, utopian, overly positive view of how great this technology is. I almost think that that view is more dangerous than the converse view, which is dystopian. And I see it a lot in the business leaders that I deal with every week, that on the one hand, they're either so fearful of it that they don't even want to have an AI conversation, but more and more of the leaders I'm dealing with are thinking it's almost like a fear of missing out. The competitor banks or telcos or insurance companies are using AI. We need to do it. We need to just AI the heck out of everything, whether it makes business sense or not, whether it makes any sense to the people who work for us or the customers that we serve. It's almost like we're losing our common sense because of AI, I think. And so I think this overly positive, overly excited view of AI is more dangerous, because the technology is fundamentally rather stupid still. Yes, it's very powerful. It can do amazing things. But compared to human intelligence, we are surprisingly far from what we call artificial general intelligence, which is the next wave we will enter when this technology becomes as smart as or smarter than human beings. So some of the news articles we see these days are what you see on the screen at the moment. This alarmist view, and that view is not totally irrelevant, but we also need to take it with a pinch of salt and balance it a little bit, where more and more business leaders are becoming alarmed. We saw that signature of about 1,000 technology leaders like Elon Musk and others about 2 months ago, asking for a moratorium on the advance and the R&D in this technology. And the funny thing, and I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk, but it's interesting. I mean, he became a billionaire because of AI. Tesla and SpaceX and these other companies are based on smart technology. And, you know, about a week after he signed this document, he launched yet another AI company. So it's almost like I'm now a billionaire, I'm the richest man in the world. Now everyone else needs to stop AI innovation. And the history of human innovation, of technology, even if we started at, discovering that we can use a piece of stone or a piece of wood to dig a carrot out of earth to feed ourselves and our family. When we discovered we could use a knife to kill an animal to eat or to kill our neighbor. It's always been this two-sided affair, using technology which is in its essence ambivalent and neutral, for good or for bad. So there's a lot of alarmist views at the moment, not entirely without cause or irrelevant, because we have to really look at this technology and what it's going to do to us and to the future of our children. But then you get this interesting article that came out this week from the AI chief at Meta, or Facebook as we know it, where, and if you read this article and you can Google it, where he says that AI is kind of as smart as a dog is at the moment, or a pet. Now, some of us are dog lovers and we think our pets are the smartest things around. But, dogs obviously don't have even nearly human level intelligence. And another interesting article I read recently, which really made me think, is that if AI would become human right now, as it is, if it became sentient, conscious, which I don't think it will be in many, many years to come, it will most likely be similar to an autistic person. And that's something to think about, because AI is actually displaying a lot of aspects of what people on the autistic spectrum would display. And the other article or topic to read on, if you would, is that many people who work in the field of AI are on the autism spectrum. I'm one of them. I'm on a low level, luckily. I'm suffering with, I'm trying to remember the name now. I think of it now, but there's elements of autism that really resonates with people who work in the field of artificial intelligence. But AI as a human would be very far on that scale. So what I'm trying to do just at the outset of this talk today is that ChatGPT really woke many of us up to, oh my word, this stuff is really real. It's no longer just in the realm of academia or science fiction or in the realm of technologists. It has been impacting our lives for many years already. It will dramatically impact our lives in the future. How do we even upskill people and train people and business leaders for roles in even as short as 5 years from now that we cannot even imagine? But then the balancing side of it is it's not nearly as smart yet as a lot of people think, and as the popular media and movies want to let us think. And that leaves us then to where in this balance between those two extremes do we find ourselves? And that's what I've already said. I'm propagating that the fundamentals of what we're teaching in business schools should stay the same. But we should adapt and pivot to this new technology, which includes trainers, facilitators, and faculty. Do we all need to become AI experts? Certainly not. But do we need to make sure we know what it's about? What is the hype and what's the reality? What are the different terms that we so easily throw around, like IoT and cloud and AI and machine learning? What do those things mean? And especially as they relate to how we manage enterprises and businesses. We should definitely get smarter and know what this technology is about. I want to move to the next slide. I don't know what's happening here. There's a great quote from Schopenhauer. Many of you might know about him. And this is just half of the quote. And I'm going to end off of this quote as well, where he says that talent hits a target that no one else can hit. But the rest of the quote says that genius hits a target that no one else can see. And in preparing for this talk, I thought about this quote. As leaders, business leaders, leaders in academics, people who are upskilling the next generation of business leaders, we need to be competitive, remain competitive. We are running businesses. Are we just hitting a target that no one else can hit? Or in a very uncertain future because of technological advance, can we hit a target that no one else can see? Because I think if we can get that right, we will really be in the pound seats from a business school's point of view. What are those skills that will really, really make a difference in the next few years? And how do we upskill people to be relevant in a world where digital twins, digital assistants, robotic process automation, non-human intelligence will infuse our workforce more and more? So just think about this. As a person working in this field, or whichever field you're working in, are you hitting or trying to hit a target that no one can hit? Or can you imagine the impossible? Can you aim for a target that no one can even see? And what is that target? And I don't want to become over philosophical or unrealistic about it. But if we can imagine, especially from a South African context point of view, with all the problems we are dealing with, if we can imagine a future that will upskill people, young people, to be even more relevant on the global stage, to utilize technology, to be not fearful of it, but to be excited to use it in a responsible and an ethical way, I think we can gain an edge, a competitive edge for our country and for our children into the future. Now, I want to start on a bit of a stark note and tell you a story about an execution. And it's not going to be all doom and gloom. And some of you might know the story. Many of you might even know it much better than I know it. In the 1930s, Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union tasked one of his top economists to study Western economies and capitalism and democracies. And the goal of the study was to prove that Soviet-style leadership and communism was superior, because in the West, it seemed that there was this continual crashes, these liftments, economical upliftments, and then crashes. And the Soviet-style leadership tried to show that our way of doing things is a lot more stable. Now imagine working for a boss like Stalin, who executed millions of people, And now we've all most likely worked for horrible bosses. Some of us right now might be working for horrible bosses. Hopefully, none of us are those horrible bosses. But imagine you get tasked by Stalin to do the study. This economist went out and he did a thorough study. And then he came back to Stalin a few months later with the unfortunate news for Stalin that he can find no evidence that Soviet-style leadership, economic policy, communism, is superior to Western-style democracy and capitalism, as flawed as it is. And he knew that he was signing his own death ticket by giving him that news. And not long after that, he knew that this economist, that there was going to be a knock on his door, that the security police would come for him. Because you don't work for a boss like Stalin and give him news that he doesn't want to hear. And there is this very beautiful letter that he wrote to his 12-year-old daughter. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "My dear Elena, always be a good girl, read many books, listen to your mother, and always remember your papa with fondness." And not long after writing that letter, which as far as I remember was the last piece that he wrote, he was arrested by the security police. He was taken off to the Gulag for hard labor. And then in the purge of 1938, he was executed by Stalin. Some of you might already know, but I'm speaking about Kondratiev, Nikolai Kondratiev, who was an amazing economist. And his work is very relevant today. One of his contemporaries, who was Polish, if I remember correctly, or Schumpeter, to a large extent made the work of Kondratiev more and more famous. Schumpeter spoke about creative destruction, these cycles, economic and technological cycles of creative destruction. What is Kondratiev is known for? For his waves of innovation, or these Kondratiev waves, or K waves as they became known. Many of you might be familiar with this. These cycles, upturns, downturns, these cycles where people and nations become richer and become poorer, gain power and lose power. It aligns somewhat closely to what we call the industrial revolutions. Today, we would have been in what Kondratiev would have called the sixth wave of innovation. But technology is exponentially impacting these waves. And this fourth industrial revolution that we are in, which is not a great way of speaking about it, and we are almost on the cusp of the fifth, is really taking us into this new wave of innovation, of creative destruction. One of the problems we have with understanding where we are today is to compare it to the previous industrial revolution. And when we all are most likely very familiar with these, because a lot of people will say, and I disagree with them, but they might be right, but I'll tell you why I think they're wrong, is that in every industrial revolution, yes, there were huge upheavals, great job losses. I mean, if you were a donkey cart driver, you had to learn to become a train or locomotive driver now. We had to upskill people in mass. But at the end of that cycle, the net effect has always been positive, even though it was dramatic for millions of people who lost their livelihoods and even lives. But we always, at the end of a cycle, create millions more jobs than the jobs that were lost because of that cycle. And this is true of every industrial revolution in the past, up until now. So when we have the job displacement discussion, a lot of people will say, don't worry too much. AI will create millions more jobs. They're not wrong, but we won't create enough jobs, and we won't create it fast enough to have a net positive effect at the end of the current cycle that we are in. And this is based on the principles that Kondratiev and many others taught. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to refer to a book by Sean Cully that I greatly encourage you to read. One of the best books I've read on this topic. The challenge we have today is that technology is changing so quickly that not only will we have to pivot our careers once or maybe twice, we will most likely pivot our careers many, many times. And so will, even more so will our children. We will not only have to upskill ourselves once or twice, or re-upskill ourselves if we would, we will have to continuously do it, which brings a challenge to education and tertiary education. In such a rapidly changing environment, what we teach people over a 3 or 4 year period, how relevant will that information be, those skills be, at the end of that cycle? Will people in certain fields of education and upskilling be largely redundant by the time they've spent their 200,000 Rand on an MBA or a certain degree? Of course, I want my doctor to go to university, but will tertiary education remain relevant? Hopefully it would, because we need it. We need thinkers. We need people who are educated. We need problem solvers more so than ever. But as long as we can keep on grappling with it, we can't remain the status quo. We can't just aim at doing our PhDs and hoping for tenure and then joining the status quo and please God, let's just not publish something that's going to get us fired. We're going to have to pivot, because I think we will become largely irrelevant in the next 5 to 10 years if we don't. In a world where continuous upskilling, continuous learning is needed, in a world where hyper-personalized learning is needed, in a world where we will most likely have much more customized, shorter courses combined with on-the-job training than long tenure kind of degrees, it's going to really have to get us to, as a community, to rethink this, and as a community in South Africa, to rethink how we do this, given our own societal problems, our hugely bad societal problems, the digital divide, poverty, gender-based violence, children who go to school hungry every day. You know that most of the children in South Africa go to school hungry every day. Many of us on this webinar live in our bubbles, and it's not wrong. We many oftentimes assume the world out there is the way we live life. We don't know hunger. Many of us don't know a home that's infused with violence. We don't always understand the hopelessness of millions of our children who just hope to gain some sort of life to work in as a till clerk or a banking clerk. And I often say, all jobs are honorable. But we have youngsters in this country, as many of you know better than I do, who are so talented, who are so intelligent, but they were just dealt the wrong deck of cards by the country and the family and the societies they were born into. So we have to have a societal and philosophical lens on this as South Africans. And unfortunately, AI technology is largely driven by the so-called global north. Most of the platforms we use will be English or French or Portuguese or Spanish, not at all accommodating the 3,000 languages and dialects in Africa. Even the medical imagery we use to train our mammography AI platforms, or the platforms that looks at other types of cancer, are not entirely relevant because of the different nuances around cancer and certain diseases across the world. So, that's the only thing I can get right through these talks. It's just, let's not be asleep at the wheel. Let's realize we all need to work together, make a small difference as much as we can. It's not just government. It is largely society and business, but even the more so, academics and research, those who through the ages have pressed the boundaries. We absolutely need each other. So this industrial revolution cannot be compared to the previous one because of the rate of change, which brings me to a fantastic book on this topic. And I'm sure many of you, I really hope many of you know about Harari. You well know Harari, or have read his books. This one of his most famous books, Sapiens, where he speaks about the possibility of creating what he calls the useless class, where we out-automate not just knowledge work, not just administrative back office, kind of low-level work, where we out-automate almost every job that humans have been doing and that we can do. And what future will we be in then, where most people on Earth are not able to work? Will we go into a Mad Max kind of an era where we really drop down the Maslow triangle to our most basic survival instincts, like you see humans react when there's a natural disaster, raping and pillaging? Will that be the world that we are leaving our children because we are out automating everything we can do? It is a big question to ask. And it's a question to ask on how we design courses, how we design our curricula. I think one of the problems we have across the world, but definitely in our country, is that the regulation around technology, around education, is so far behind. You know, by the time we get a new AI-related business course approved by SACWA, it's already changed tenfold. So, you know, we can also only do that much, but how do we positively try and influence government and governmental agencies? It's a big challenge. I don't have those answers. Maybe some of you have great ideas, which I'd love to hear about, which we all can learn from. I'm almost at the end, and then I'd love to open up to some of the conversations and comments and questions. Technology is changing so quickly. Just look at this, these 4 pictures that I'm going to show you. Not too long ago, most of us had to sit at a desk, at a PC to do our work. You couldn't do your work if you were not sitting in that location at your desk. And then we entered the smartphone era a few years ago, where you essentially in the palm of your hand have access to all the knowledge that has ever been created by humans. We can access our emails, browse the web, access most of our company's platforms through a smartphone, but we were no longer isolated to a desk. We could take it wherever we went, but we had to hold it in our hands. And then we got to an era of where we are now carrying devices on our bodies. It's not new, but it's becoming mainstream. We no longer have to carry it in our hands. We no longer have to sit at the device. It is on our bodies. And then we're entering, and this is happening right now, is the brain-computer interface. And if you've been following the news, and again, yes, Elon Musk, but many others as well, but Elon Musk through his firm Neuralink, who have been testing these brain implants on animals, primates, pigs in particular, they now have FDA approval to start testing it on humans, on human brains. And again, back to the knife that can kill an animal to feed my family or kill my neighbor. This technology is ambivalent. It shows great promise for people with dementia, people with brain injuries, people who are losing their hearing or their eyesight. But what about privacy? It's one thing if you can read my thoughts, but what if you can influence my thoughts because of the implant in my brain? So sitting at the desk, carrying it in our hands, carrying it in our bodies, to now carrying it inside our bodies, and the more so in our brains. This is real. It is happening right now. It will become relevant to all of us in the next few years. It poses great potential advantages. But the threats, the Orwellian threats, the 1984 threats around this technology and Big Brother and Speak Right and the thought police is becoming a real concern. It should become a great concern for us. Do we even need to train people still if their brains can just be connected to the cloud? Imagine you can ChatGPT your thoughts. Imagine the potential for this, but do we still need skills and experience and training? I think we will, but this is a world where more than ever we need ethicists and philosophers to help us, not technologists. We need ethicists and philosophers who, by the way, will be the 2 skills most in demand in the future of AI. Not AI engineers, quants, other technologists. It's thinking people who can make sense of technology that are opening up a can of worms from an ethical and a philosophical point of view that we as humans in all our history never had to grapple with before. Toward the end, the question then is, what do we teach? And as I've already said, a lot of the things that we are teaching at the moment, the principles of business, etc., will always remain relevant. But we have to overlay it with a new era of smart technology. And here I want to just quickly tell you about a story that a client, one of our large banks whom I consulted with around their automation strategy, that he said to me, because he said, Johan, a lot of the things you talk about, I can Google. There are a lot of white papers out there, you know, Gartner, Forrester, not even to mention academic papers. Access to information is so easy. And then he said this to me. He said, I will pay you for the mark on your back. I said, what do you mean? He said, and this was difficult to contract for and to create a commercial model on. He said, the one thing I can't find from my vendors and from my staff and from Google is the ability not to make the mistakes that you have already made, Johan, in implementing this technology through large consulting firms and large customers. I want to find a way to not make the same mistakes that you've already made or that you've seen others make. And this made me wonder about education and business education, and also the relevance of faculty who are very smart, very experienced people, but in a world infused with technology, are we able to teach people from the marks of our back and the experience we've had about how this technology can go wrong from a business context and an implementation context? And I think the answer is most likely not, because many of us have never had the opportunity to work with this technology, to implement it. And I think here, and a lot of universities are doing it with the adjunct faculty and others, bring in industry experts. Do it even more and more than you are doing it at the moment. Bring in people who can teach from experience how this technology can positively or adversely impact how an organization operates, how your market share can increase or decrease, how it impacts your people and their worthiness of you as human beings as you out-automate the work they've been doing for years. And toward the end, and I'm sure these slides, and I'll send it on to you this afternoon, if there's one book to read, and this is a book I read about 4 years ago by Sean Cully. He's in the UK. He's a supply chain expert and a technology expert, and one of the nicest people you'll ever speak with if you follow him on Twitter or LinkedIn. What a fantastic book. It is a massive book to read. It's not easy to read, but he really takes you on a tour de force, so to speak, around technological advancement since the most early evolutionary stages of what we did as humans. He also speaks a lot about conductive and creative destruction. And in fact, that's where a lot of those principles I learned from his book, and I've done a lot of webinars with him and a lot of personal conversations. But if there's one book that will really help you get ready for a future that is so daunting and so unknown, it is Transition Point by Sean Cully. And with that, and I think we've got about 20 minutes left, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see what the questions are. Let's see how we can learn from each other. And as I said in the beginning, just to set the theme, I only know that much. So I don't know, Anne, from your side, comments, questions, let's look at the chat.
Yeah, fantastic, Johan. Thank you so much. I found that quite stimulating, actually, just thinking of things from a different perspective. So there are a couple of questions in the chat and a couple of comments, and I think the best way to do it is for the people that posted their question to actually pose it as part of the discussion. So Kobus, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to start on your expert assertion comment that you made?
And oh, well, thanks, Johan. Thanks again for a fascinating. I mean, I just enjoy these sessions so much, and you know what I mean by enjoy. It's just adds to one's own reflections and thinking on this, and positioning oneself within the larger hype, so to speak. But you humbly asserted at the beginning of the term expert, and I just shared David Ben-Gurion's words there, and I mean, in your narrative, it also came through when you spoke about how we this future that this preferred future that we envision or that we would want, and that we can only become, as Ben Gurion said, experts on the future, but vision must then replace experience, because the experience is only looking backwardly. But yeah, no, thanks, Johan. I've there's many things and that runs through one's head. I've also recently listened to from a I don't know, John Emeritus Professor John Lennox from Oxford University. He's also got very deep found philosophical, but obviously looking at it from a theist perspective as well, which is very valuable. But as always, Johan, respect.
Thanks, Cobus. Peter, you were next. You had a comment. Would you like to pick up on your post that you put in the chat?
Yes, thank you very much for allowing me. Joining you again from the UAE. I don't want to repeat all the words of gratitude from the previous commenter, because I feel exactly the same way. I've really benefited from your presentations over the 3 sessions, and I really appreciate all the thought and effort that you have put into this. Yeah, my thoughts also relate to the fact that we're all a little bit in the dark with this. Obviously, some have got more eyes than others on what is going on. But I have 3 comments in the chat, and the first one is really me asking you, Johan, perhaps to go back to one of the questions you asked right at the beginning, and that was, will AI replace my doctor? Will it replace experience? And my feeling with that is it definitely will at some point. That's my feeling. I might be the person in the dark looking for a black cat that is not there, but I think it will, if it hasn't already to some extent. And so I just, my problem with that is not the fact that that is bad news or good news. My problem is it's a worrisome news because of the speed at which it's likely to happen, given the quantum leap in processing power that we have now. So I don't want to be the one in the dark room. I wanted to hear more from you, and I hope you are the expert of the future on that particular one.
Thank you. Firstly, not at all the expert, I think, but I heard a great quote from a friend once who's a doctor, and she said, AI will not replace doctors, but AI will replace doctors who don't use AI. Okay. And it brings me back to the human element, especially when it comes to healthcare. You know, if I get a diagnosis that I have cancer and maybe I have 6 months left, I certainly want to look a human being in the eyes at that time to guide me, to help me with my fears, to help my family. You know, the AI from a diagnosis point of view can do amazing things, you know, compare a lung scan, as you know, to 100 million or 10 million other scans, be a lot more accurate in the diagnosis. So doctors, as in many other fields, should utilize this tech. But when it comes to that empathy, wisdom, problem solving, those things that only we can do, I don't see AI replacing that. So I don't want a chatbot to tell me I have cancer one day, or a ChatGPT, or that my partner who is pregnant will lose the baby, or that my child is missing, or all those, you know, how do we, I can't AI that, I think. So I think there's a lot that we do as humans where technology can help us be better. But personally, I just don't see it replace the things when it comes to human values, the value of life, encouragement, hope. I don't see us automating that. The balance for us, or the challenge for us as professionals in any field, is just how do we use the tech to do the stuff that we don't want to do in any case, the reporting and so forth, so that we have more face time with a customer or a patient. So, but Peter, I think as this technology increases in power, this very topic you just mentioned might change, and we're going to have to grapple with it. But for now, I just don't see a non-human entity giving me the empathy and guidance when I'm sick or dealing with poverty or a missing child, for instance. But a great comment from your side. I'm just a fellow question answer with you.
Okay, can I just throw one short one in before I hand over to, and I totally agree with you, you know, in terms of your answer, broadly speaking. But here I am at a university here, UAE University in Al-Ain, UAE, and I have a colleague in our College of IT who has developed a robot specifically for empathizing with kids in the hospital. So those robots are actually working in the cancer unit of our main cancer hospital here, and their task really is to comfort, you know, children in that kind of situation. You know, I haven't seen it firsthand to know whether they are doing a good job or not. But when I see technologies like that, I start thinking, maybe in another few years, maybe something might happen. That's just something to share at this stage. Sorry, back to you, Anne.
No, thank you, Peter. I think it's quite relevant. Actually, visiting doctors, you know, when you get a second and third opinion is not always the best thing you want. You want the robot or the bot to tell you in the first place exactly what's wrong with you. So I think that's going to be a developing story on that side. So very interesting to hear the developments at your university as well. So KK, it's up to you. I saw you post a lot of things there. What would you like to bring up today?
Thanks, and I just want to switch my video on. My wife's a therapist, and she always said that for a child to be normally develop emotionally, they actually need 12 touches, human touches per day. So that's a principle coming from the therapy point of view. And then also there's a book written about 20 years back called The Way We Think. And for Kohner and Turner, it's two theorists that spoke about this, but what they did is they extracted 3 concepts from it. And the one is called integration, identification, and the third one, imagination. And so, you know, for example, if you do any sort of philosophy or theoretical elaboration, you need identification of, you know, let's say, you know, what you see in the data, what you see in the theory, and you need to be able to integrate it. But you need human imagination to give those new relationships, new names and things. And so if you think about philosophy and you think about ethics and all of that, you know, I want to agree with you, Johan. I think there's an aspect that AI won't be able to do. And you know, just for the fun of it, I made this comment where I said I tried to get ChatGPT to answer things in a politically incorrect way, and it simply refused. And what it told me is that it's got a specific worldview embedded in it. Because the thing is, what's politically correct today was politically incorrect 20 years ago. And I have no guarantee that what's politically correct today will be politically correct in 10, 20 years from now. So whoever is in power determines what is politically correct, what is ethical, what is good behavior, what's good ethics, all of those things. And for that, we need the philosophers. And so AI, ChatGPT, for example, would very strongly say, I'm coded not to answer in politically incorrect ways. So there's a worldview in this whole thing. So thanks, Johan.
Cool. If I can just quickly comment, and okay, a great comment. You know, it's interesting, if you think of Silicon Valley, it's obviously it's infused with people who are often left-leaning. And we build our biases into the technology. So if you ask ChatGPT a question on Trump, who is right-leaning Republican, or on Biden, who's left-leaning Democrat, it will be a lot more pro-Democrat than pro-Republican. It is sometimes pro-male and not pro-female, or pro-certain ethnicities, which is a huge problem in something like DALL-E and other platforms which are text to image. Because if you think of it, because it's unregulated internet data, and all of us who have been surfing the web will know there's most likely 95% nonsense and a little bit of good stuff here and there. But you are very right. But our view of ethics change, you know, what we thought were ethical and right maybe 200 years ago, we were forced to change through technological advance on thinking philosophically. So imagine our kids and their kids, what kind of conversations they will have philosophically in a world that is virtual reality, brain implants, where you have designer babies, where you have social obedience systems like in China already. But we have to, and imagination is the right word, philosophers have to push the boundaries from a future imagination point of view. So yeah, I'm just confirming what you're saying, because I have no idea how to answer it. I don't know, but great comments.
Right. I see a comment in the chat back from Kathleen. She's unable to mute. So maybe I can just put it here, Johan. I don't know if you're able to read it and everybody else, but if we can have some input from everybody. Kathleen said, I'm about to begin teaching the capstone course in an MBA program. I'm framing this term by building on integration of skills, knowledge learned this far. Building is the future-oriented question. How do you stay relevant? I'm looking forward to students' responses and would love to hear specifics from all here today. You have started this thinking, and can we all specify a how? Question mark. Johan, anyone else? Have you got some thoughts?
How to stay relevant? I think it's difficult for people with limited experience to be very relevant, because you learn that through experience, you know. And I often think if you're 18 or 19, you know, how relevant can you really be given your worldview? Because you just have to learn through living life. I think if we can, and this is my view, but I'd love to hear what other people think. I think relevance will be as it applies to humans, to our colleagues, to the staff who work for us, to our clients, and to society as a whole. I think I mentioned this the last time, and I know a lot of people are not fans of Jordan Peterson. I'm a huge fan. Now and then I do cringe with what he says, but he made a comment where he said the ultimate goal of an education is to alleviate unnecessary suffering. And we know it's also about living and paying the bills and making a life and looking after your kids and all of those things. But I think staying relevant in whatever career we follow, if we can alleviate suffering, whatever that means, one way or another, we'll be relevant. But yeah, that's my view, most likely very limited view as well, and love to hear what other people think.
Anyone else got a comment? Please feel free to engage. We're here to all meet each other and learn from each other. They're quiet, Johan. They're intimidated by your expertise.
No, look, I think, and the point I've been trying to make, and that's why these sessions are so valuable, I think, is we are all in this thing together. And we need each other. We need different viewpoints, different levels of expertise, new ideas. I think even more so than ever before, we need a community of well-meaning people and thinkers in the context of our country in particular to figure this out, because otherwise, you know, we either figure it out or it will be figured out for us, and that will most likely not be a good result. It's okay not to know much about this tech. It's okay not to be an expert, but I think if I can land one message today, is don't underestimate how much this will impact us and our children. And let's not be caught asleep at the wheel because we did not pay attention to where this technology is going.
Thanks, Johan. I mean, I think also, I was chatting to Johan before we came online. This is going back to slightly younger people than even business schools where we're all from, or universities. But the skills that they are teaching at schools today, are they still relevant for the future? Are we going to already start seeing at school level focus on the way that we need to think and train the way that the children are thinking to even come into business spaces or executives. So I think the question about relevance is absolutely critical at this stage. And even the programs, the MBA programs, any of the ones that the business schools are running, is to always bear that in mind. Where is this going to leave them in 5 years' time? What additions or Kobus, I mean, when you're designing your new program, are you changing what you're putting into your curricula to make sure that they are current in 5 years' time? You've obviously had carte blanche to design something new. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for putting me on the spot, Anne. You know, I'm probably the slowest reflector in this entire audience. It remains when you, firstly, there's a difference between what an individual produces from one's own bedrock of, you know, your worldview, your personal philosophies, etc. But then you are part of a larger team, and where we are at the moment is that some of the, call it the basic functions of, whether we want to call it, let's call it management functions, that we still typically find, you know, the marketing, finance, HR, operations, and those kinds of things. Though my sense is that for now, those kind of basic elements still need to be in the design. However, and this is where potentially a lot of experimentation come in, because of my belief of the real way in which to shift perspectives and paradigms is when you are immersed in the real scenario, or as close as possible to the real scenario, considering the opening up of new neural pathways that perhaps previously were not activated, etc. And I think the big thing is to get students to that aha moment, where they break through the ceiling of what we've currently in the educational space probably have had, and to perhaps draw on my colleagues' views earlier, philosophy as an example. I'm probably, I don't know yet of any, and this again is because I don't have the information of every MBA program in the entire world. But one of the elements that we are endeavoring to bring in is to integrate philosophy into the learning experience, into the design. I see there's many other hands up, so let me park for a moment. Thanks.
Thank you,
Anne.
Kobus. That was fantastic. Kirsten, do you want to go?
Yeah, thanks. And just one correction. I made a stupid mistake that I meant Jordan Peterson said science is about 100 years old. And he said just another culture is going to die away and something new is going to come. So it's an interesting quote, just to confirm what you also said. But from the education point of view, I actually wanted to respond to that question. You know, when ChatGPT came out, I thought to myself, you know, what if I'm a student and I want to generate a honors level thesis with ChatGPT? And I went, and it took me 4 days. I wrote a thesis of about 37 pages. I got it assessed by a colleague. He passed the thesis. I ran it through Turnitin. It got low plagiarism. I ran it through Turnitin's AI detection, and it got like 79% detection, which meant it missed 20%. And you know, what got me thinking about this whole thing is, what do we do now at honors level or introductory research programs? And for me, it was like, you know, we can't ask our students to do sort of elementary research, because they can simply generate it if they know the right thing. I mean, I spoke to a friend of mine's son. He's last year was matric, and he said, "Oh, you just use Grammarly and you write all your essays, you know." And I thought, oh well, they know more about the tools than us. And so I was thinking that probably the best thing is, you know, in terms of teaching research methodology, especially at honors master's level, is you teach the student to become prompters, but prompters in terms of structuring a good dissertation, a good essay. And then for the higher levels, you start populating those different sections. But this is just a comment. You know, AI seriously challenged at least my approach to, you know, teaching research methodology.
100%. And actually, we ran a course 2 weeks ago on supervision and external examiners. We did a 4-day workshop. I'm not sure if anyone on the call was on that training program, but your comment about Turnitin and Grammarly were absolutely coming up a lot, you know, and how do you assess students? So it was not really saying that you can't use the AI tools. It's more, how are you going to use them better, you know, to make you think in a different way. So that is probably where your philosophy comes in the way of thinking and structure. And my thought process actually of what subject should the kids be taking so that they can start thinking more in an integrated fashion before they get up into your higher levels of education. But I think, thank you, Matapane, you attended. Maybe you want to chat on the group here, how you found your insights. I do know it is 4:30, and we said we were going to take an hour. So maybe we can take one more comment and then close it up. It's been a fascinating discussion this afternoon. Matapane, do you want to pass a comment before we close up? Or are you good to go? All right. And Colleen as well. Thank you for coming. To me, you have your hand up. Maybe we can end off with your comment.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Johan, for another fascinating discussion. I mean, I'm sitting here reflecting on, you know, what we've been doing in terms of creating learning experiences for executives in, you know, executive education and that sort of thing. I recently did a study to try and understand if a certain population of professionals, number one, do they use AI in their businesses or in their day-to-day work, and how are they doing it? And I'm a bit worried because it almost seems as if they're expecting that they will be able to touch and feel AI and realize that, oh, this is AI, and this is how I engage with it, almost like Google, that, you know, there's a prompt, you can put in something and something will be spewed out. But increasingly, you know, if AI comes to a point where you can't even recognize it, and I understand that's where it's going, how then do you teach these professionals, you know, adaptive learning strategies that will allow them to continuously be able to adapt as this technology is adapting? I'll give you a simple example. When we were in high school, you get taught, okay, this is the question, answer it. It's almost like here's a prompt, answer it. You go to varsity. In my case, I did software engineering, and then they say you need to adapt. So if you get in software engineering, you get a new error, you take the error, you Google it, or you put it on a specific search engine, and then it will probably give you some ideas. With ChatGPT, for example, it's almost as if you have to really understand the context in order to get value out of it. But what do you do in cases where there isn't even an understanding, that there is no understanding of the context, yet you need to understand some idea of what you're trying to get out of it in order for you to get out of it? So I'm trying to figure out, you know, what is the best way to build learning strategies that will allow people to not just know today how to use the technology, but to continuously be able to adapt without having, you know, functionality such as Google that gives you other information that you didn't ask for. But from what I'm seeing, it's almost as if the people that are working with it are expecting it to work that way. Just a reflection and a comment on that would be greatly appreciated, because I'm concerned just about that if they don't see it or feel it or think that they're working with it currently, then they think it's not artificial intelligence. Your comments, Johan?
To me, thank you for that easy question. No, look, I agree with everything you've said. I see it with the clients I deal with from a consulting point of view. I think firstly, hugely misunderstood by most people, but especially by business leaders. I think they rely a lot on their technology departments, as they should. But the more powerful this technology is becoming, the more it's impacting how the business operates. There's regulatory questions around it. There's the impact on the environment, on staff, on customers. So AI-related decisions should be made at board level, where unfortunately very few people really understand it. So they rely on technologists or on their vendors. And they also I think they also fall in one of those two extremes that I've mentioned. They either fear it so much they don't want to touch it, or they think they can AI everything in the business. So, and I don't even know if this will nearly answer your question to me. I think as long as people can understand what this tech is, what it's not, which is a huge venture, because it's not very easy to explain what AI is. It's such a huge field, and to understand how to, if you even need it in your business, because a lot of businesses don't even need it at this stage. If they can just work Excel, they can most likely keep on running their businesses. And then to learn the basic principles of technological advance and impact on their businesses and people, to, with that lens and context, stay relevant into the future. But I think that for now, if you think of an exec education perspective, it is landing the very basics of what this technology is. I also think, if I can just add this, I think more and more of big organizational corporate boards, where currently it's mostly constituted by financial people, CAs, I think more and more of our big corporates will become technology leadership boards alongside the financial people. But so we need business-minded, savvy technologists on boards, and that is a problem, because none of the very smart, or very few of the very smart technologists I've ever worked with have any business sense, in my opinion. You need to just lock them in the room and put a pizza under the door every now and then. So there's a huge opportunity there, I think, if we can get it right from an exec education point of view, to me.
To me, I see you laughing there. I'd be quite interested to see your research report to me. Would you be prepared to share that with all of us? I mean, I think that'd be quite tangible for this community.
What did I get myself into? Yes, of course, I will certainly share it. As soon as I'm done with it, I'm happy to share it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tumi. We're out of time, unfortunately. I see we've gone a bit over, but Johan, it's been a fantastic session today. I really, really appreciate your time and energy. And to all of you on the call, thank you so much for your time and attending one of our SABSA workshops or discussions. We really appreciate all your inputs and insights. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Colleen, I know you asked me a question about where you could find the old recordings from our previous two workshops. They are going to be loaded onto our website. I'm sorry, I'm a bit behind on that, but they will be available on our website under resources, and you can click on and watch them together with the slides that Johan has sent us. So please just take a look out for that, and I will let you all know on email when it is uploaded. So Johan, any last thoughts or questions? And from my side, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And this is a lovely community. I look forward to continuous collaboration. We have an important job to do for our children's sake. All of us have to be involved. Let's not be caught asleep at the wheel. This is serious business. I'll close with that.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good evening, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.